Shut it off.
Good evening and welcome to the City of River Falls Municipal Utility Advisory Board meeting for Monday, October 17th, 2022. May we have a roll call?
Carol? Garrell?
Here.
Lick?
Present.
Klecker?
Here.
Spafford?
Here.
Toom?
Here.
Wells Mangold?
Here, I think.
Great. And Kevin, would you mind introducing our new member?
Yeah, I just want to take just 1 second and introduce Mark Klecker and say thank you, Mark, for stepping forward and offering your services to the Utility Advisory Board. And Mark was appointed by the mayor last week. So Mark, welcome aboard. Mark Klecker.
Great, thank you. Looking for an approval of the minutes from the UAB meeting of September 19th.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you. Approved. Public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to us tonight? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Patricia LaRue. I live at 49 Marcella Court. At the September 27th City Council meeting, the Kinney Corridor Collaborative presented comments. During those comments, the KCC stated that it had raised very close to $300,000. However, that number was immediately qualified into 3 buckets: in kind, pledges, and receipts. In kind. Does the free work done over the last 3 years by attorney Steve Goff and grant writer Tony Steiner count as part of the $300,000 raised? Then there's a pledges. Who is pledging and how much? Will those pledges follow through if the final plan is not to their liking? Or can they renege on their pledge and we stand empty-handed? Then there's the receipts. I'm assuming this is actual funds in the bank. How much is that? Enough to pay the KCC's debt it owed the utility ratepayers for the Powell Falls Dam decommissioning and removal study? Before we talk about new commitments, let's make sure we pay up the current debts. If the city is asking you to move this resolution forward to the council, they should have answers to those questions. Break down the $300,000 purportedly raised by the KCC and how much is represented in each of the buckets. The KCC said that they could commit up to $175,000 for 1/2 of the city's 1/2 Army Corps feasibility study. In exchange, the KCC wants a seat at the table. Does that mean that the KCC has this money, but if it doesn't get a seat at the table, they will not commit the money to the Kinney Corridor project? Again, what if the Army Corps decides to go a different direction? Do those funds evaporate? Is this a quid pro quo, or do it our way, or the money is gone? We've been to this circus before. 2 or 3 years from now, this whole series of discussions and comments and arguments we're talking about today will be forgotten. When the outside funds don't materialize, we will hear the refrain that the utilities has known all along that these costs are ratepayers' responsibilities. And that's the truth. Although someone's saying they're going to give us money, as we go down the road, this is our responsibility as ratepayers. There is no doubt the KCC is doing everything it can to drum up donations. There was a Twin Cities Trout Unlimited guy crawling all over Powell Falls Dam earlier this year with a wagon and a drill bit. He was taking core samples out of Powell Falls Dam to sell for $100 each. No safety equipment on, a total liability to the city, but there he was, taking pieces out of our dam to sell. The KCC talked about holding a raffle. The prize was that the winner got to be the one to flip the switch on Junction Falls generation. And by the way, there's a lot more to shutting off a dam than flipping a switch, and there is no switch. More recently, the KCC is figuratively selling 1-inch segments of the river for a $20 donation. But here's the bottom line. It's been 3 years. If the community, the grassroots of River Falls, wanted the dam removed and wanted to be rid of Lake George, the donations would be coming in, but they just aren't. Let me give you an example of when people believe in something worthwhile. 19% of our utility customers pay extra on their utility bill each and every month to buy green blocks of energy. Brian and I have been buying 3 green blocks of energy every month since the program's inception, which has been over 20 years. The utility customer gets nothing back in payment except knowing that they are supporting renewable energy. People are paying thousands of dollars to install solar panels, either on churches, solar gardens, or in their home. Brian and I bought 2 solar panels at the solar garden, over a $1,000 investment in renewable energy. There will be no immediate return on that money, but people believe in a cause and they make a financial commitment. The River Falls community is not voluntarily buying into, donating, or financially supporting dam removal and loss of Lake George because they don't believe in it. The KCC quoted Director Westhouse to have said, by 2023, the Powell Falls Dam will be history. We have $1 million from the DNR sitting there waiting for us to use. I believe I heard the director comment that the DNR said we could use a portion of those funds to pay for half of the Army Corps feasibility study. Let's keep our relationship with the Corps simple, the Corps and the community, without a third party trying to buy their seat at the table. In the meantime, the KCC fundraising and the remainder of the DNR grant money can focus on Powell Falls Dam removal, sediment management, and reclaiming the newly free-flowing portions of the Kenny, which are currently being ignored. One last point. There's pushback to the notion of reconsidering the removal of Junction Falls Dam. It goes like this. We went through all of this 4 years ago. It's been decided. It's what the people wanted. It's not what the people wanted. What the people wanted was what they thought they were going to get is a 20-foot waterfall hidden behind Junction Falls Dam. What they were told is that someone else would pay for it. Well, there are no hidden falls, and we know now the only people footing the bill are taxpayers and ratepayers. Free the Kenny, paying for it was an empty promise. It was a marketing tool to move the community to do something that once done could not be undone. But let's get back to it's been decided. Let's move that wagon back a little further. Just 32 years ago, the City Council committed the taxpayers and ratepayers to a $2 million project in today's money for a dam reconstruction project. We invested in our hydros. We trusted our council. We were told reconstructing Junction Falls Dam was a long-term vision to serve our community for 50 to 75 years. Less than 24 years later, the city was already planning to move forward to tear out our long-term investment. I'm not the one changing the long-term narrative. I'm promoting the original one, the one that's been paid for by us and has been serving us as it was intended. It's called Junction Falls Dam. And I just learned from Mr. Simpson that I very likely am saying something wrong when I say that the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes, money goes into the general fund. I understand that's not true, so I apologize for saying something that was wrong, and I'm not sure where I got that information, but I have been promoting it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. LaRue. Any other comments? Thank you. All right. Seeing none, we move on to the consent agenda. And could I get a motion to acknowledge the meeting minutes?
Motion to acknowledge.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Consent agenda is approved. At this moment, I'm going to jump down to reports, number 5, Energy Assistance Process and Tools Report, and we'll hear from Amy White.
Amy, thanks for coming tonight. Amy is our Community Services Director and City Clerk, and there was a request from this board to learn more about our bill pay assistance programs and processes, and Amy put together a little presentation, tell you exactly how that works. Thank you, Amy.
Yes, good evening, Utility Advisory Board members, and thank you for giving me some time tonight to speak to you about the Bill Pay Assistance Program offered by the City of River Falls and the River Falls Municipal Utility. For those of you who don't know me, or some of you that do, I'm Amy White, the Community Services Director Clerk, and part of my role is the oversight and supervision of the City Utility Customer Service Team. Some of you may have read the mayor's message in the e-source, which encouraged customers to seek assistance but I plan to talk a little bit more about regarding the process of that and the numbers a little bit further. I'm going to start by discussing how customers are made aware of available assistance programs. Customer service provides notification by mail on a monthly basis for past due and disconnection notifications. Bill inserts with information from Wisconsin Home Energy Assistance Program are mailed to utility bills around October mailing date and new income guidelines when applying for energy assistance. WEEP offers a once-a-year energy assistance benefit during the regular heating cycle from October 1st to May 15th, which coincides with the insert that is mailed. Customer service staff reaches out to those individuals with outstanding past due utility balances in February and March to encourage customers to apply for energy assistance. These personal phone calls continue through the disconnection process. Disconnections are allowed between the months of April and November. If a customer has applied for energy assistance and requires additional funding, customer service provides numbers to our local agencies for assistance, as well as encourage them to contact WEEP for additional crisis funds. On this screen, I'm just going to go through our largest supporting agencies. WESCAP provides energy assistance first to the heating source of the individual customer, whether that's gas or from the municipal utility. Additional funds may be available to customers that are disconnected or will be disconnected in the form of crisis funds. WPPI Energy, that's our local public power source, provides fundings in the form of commitment to community. This assistance covers any non-heating electric costs to our customers. The application process is the same as WESCAP. However, a different committee reviews the applications and determines eligibility and the amount of funding. Some of our local agencies include the Salvation Army, Assistance and Resource Center, or as most refer to them as ARC, Operation Help, and Help for Homeowners who need additional assistance are encouraged to apply with the statewide program Wisconsin Help for Homeowners. Wisconsin Help is a new statewide program that can help homeowners who live in Wisconsin with overdue bills, including utilities. It's important to note that the program stopped taking applications for 2022 on September 30th. They will begin the application process again, but not until 2023. The team ran some numbers and provided the number of customers assisted by each program and the total dollar amount provided since November 1st. WESCAP provided over $22,000 to 79 customers. Crisis funding provided support to 25 customers and the amount of just over $10,000. WPPI's program Commitment to Community continues to be our #1 source of bill pay assistance. This year, over $44,000 was distributed to 206 customers. The Salvation Army and ARC work together to provide utility assistance for River Falls municipal utility customers. The Salvation Army assisted 13 customers, totaling just over 2,600. And ARC provided just over 26,000 to 86 customers. Operation Help, which it helps customers primarily in St. Croix County, has assisted 8 customers totaling over $2,400. And lastly, the Wisconsin Help for Homeowners program is new, and the River Falls Municipal Utility added this program as of June 2022. So as of today, 3 customers have been assisted, totaling just over $1,300. The customer service team is here to help with all of your utility needs, and I just want to thank this team. This team works really hard at times staying later than need be just to provide assistance to customers. We had most recently, we had an individual who was actually disconnected. Found out she was the individual living in the home, but not the individual that was on the account. She obviously didn't find out until she returned home from work. It's about 4:45. We get the phone call from her. Really, really upset that she returned home without power. The customer service team got her in here, got the account updated, and by the time she returned home, actually contacted ARC. ARC provided some funding to help her get current, and by the time she got home, her utilities were restored. So just the kind of things that we do here, which is really nice being a small municipal-owned utility. So that's what I have for you tonight. Do you guys have any questions? Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Amy, thank you. And I'd like to just build on that a little bit too with that team she has, just for context. So in any given month, they could be sending out anywhere between 500 and 700 letters to people behind on the bills. That usually whittles it down to a couple hundred, and then they go out and make several hundred phone calls to customers working on payment arrangements and getting them the help through those agencies you saw there. At the end of the month, it's pretty typical to have 5 or less disconnects in the city of River Falls, typically around 3 that usually rearrange out. So we go from 5 to 700 in a month. Her team does this all the way down to less than 5 disconnects each month because they're working with them to make those arrangements through the agencies you saw there. So I know she wouldn't say that, but they do an unbelievable job.
And if a customer does not qualify for that type of assistance, we do work with the customer to provide a reasonable payment plan to get them current to ensure that there isn't a disconnection.
You just read my mind. That was my next question. Or that was my question. Yeah. Is there an opportunity for customer service to help the folks who may not qualify? But if somebody's in need, call customer service. That's your number one starting point, and that excellent team will help as they can.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. That was excellent. And thanks, Kevin, for setting that up. That was very informative for our group here, and good to know at this time of year. All right, so let's jump back up to new business. And the first one that we'll cover is number 3, resolution recommending award of the 2023 to 2025 tree trimming contract. Kevin?
Yeah, Wayne Seiberling, our electric superintendent, is here to give you a very brief presentation on tree trimming for our distribution and transmission lines and everything that goes in around that. So Wayne, thanks for coming tonight. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I finally got it over on the right screen. See it's up here. Good evening, Utility Advisory Board. I'm here to see if we can get a tree. Here I'm babbling here up here already, so I apologize. It's been a while since we've been up here and done a presentation. So I'm here for the Zealy's Tree Service contract proposal for 2023-2025. We're going to go over a few items. Obviously, the Zealy's Tree Service, River Falls tree trimming map, the difference between transmission and distribution tree trimming, and the notification process. Zealy's was established in 1987. They're located out of Bruce, Wisconsin, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of Ladysmith, Wisconsin. That seems to be a easier reference for location. And we partnered with them in 2017. So this is 6 years into working with them in our current structure we have now. As you can see, these are different tree trimming areas that we've set up previously here at the utility. Each one has a different area, obviously, in 3 different areas for the advantage of the 3-year contract. This year will be Area 3, moving forward with 2023 in mind. Some of the work that Zealy's have done for us, a couple of the pictures were from 2018, was it, when we had the outage up in Highview? So some of them are present work that they were doing for us at that time. Here's some more pictures. The one picture is clearing where you can see the large equipment is what they've what cleared out in that area from that outage. Our distribution lines, we clear them once every 3 years, and the transmission line is once every 4 years. To make clear, the distribution lines are typically around in the city. The transmission lines run through Glen Park on the south end of town and around back to McCall Saddle Club Road on the east side of the city. Many styles of trimming: hand trimming, bucket tree trimming, backyard bucket, which we've been doing a lot of in the last couple of years with this company, and the track brush removal equipment, which does a lot of the transmission work. You can see the team here, which is and then our form of communication to our customers. Letters, postcards, door tags, social media, Facebook, website. I want to give a shout out to our team here too. They work with our contractor and do a good job communicating with their customers and helping out with any customer concerns during this process. This will help kind of explain some of the distribution clearance zones around the distribution lines with the clearance of 10 feet minimum we try to maintain. Obviously, the further the distance, the better. Helps with any other trees that may enter into the danger zone if the tree trimmer sees that while they're out there clearing lines. And then the transmission lines. You know, typically it's a 60-foot wide right away. So it helps with to prevent the potential hazard trees that are outside that area. Any questions? Went through that kind of quick.
I have just two things to add, if I may, to your presentation that might help our board tonight. So one, in the current contract we have with Zeeles, there is a clause in there, if both parties are amenable, that we would agree to extend the contract. There's an extension clause that's available in there, so that's really what we're kind of using for this, because we've had success with Zeeles. And two, Zeeles Tree Service is one of the only ones in the area that are able to do this, because they have special certifications to be able to trim around transmission and distribution lines. So a lot of tree trimmers don't have the certifications to be able to do that. So your pool of available tree contractors becomes somewhat limited. So we're satisfied with Zeeles. They gave us new prices that Wayne was satisfied with, and we just would like to enact the continue on with service clause in the contract.
Kevin, if I had a better memory, maybe I would remembered in 2020 when we initiated the initial contract. Just curious, was that bid at that time, or did we accept proposals from multiple companies? Or they were the only ones, or?
Wayne, I'll refer to you, but I believe we had several people that bid on that.
We just had Zeeles. I did reach out to other companies, and none of them put a proposal in for it at that time. So
you did reach out at that time.
I did. I'm trying to get more companies, because it is such a specialty.
Sure. And just out of curiosity, how long can the renewable clause last, and at what point, kind of from a business standpoint, are we obligated to rebid this?
It's in the contract to maybe look at it again as a renewal, but I think once is enough, and then we need to rebid it personally. As the Zeeles has grown quite a bit since the last time we've signed a contract with them, so we want to make sure we're doing the best interest for our ratepayers.
Thank you.
Just a quick point of clarification, Kevin, on the resolution. It says that it's on a 2-year rotating basis. But we got to.
So that's always tough to explain. So I had to sit down with Wayne to talk about how the distribution and transmission lines and how Wayne has it sequencing. You want to take a shot at trying to explain that sequencing? Because
Sorry.
I took the 30-minute version in a picture to figure that out, but.
Yeah, no, it's in the 2023, maybe seen in the handout, it's got distribution area number 3 and one of the transmission lines. And the following year is just the distribution only. So it's just how that rotation works with the transmission and distribution next year. And then the distribution the next year. That's why it's a 2-year cycle. It kind of matches up with the budget time frame that set the city for us. So that's why I reference it as a 2-year cycle.
I understand. Thank you.
Does that help a little bit?
I think so. It's a 2-year cycle with doing some every year and then some every 3 years.
Yes, yeah.
But so how long does this renewable clause, I guess, how long is that cycle?
It's in the contract for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
Through this cycle of trimming.
right.
So the money you're seeing out there is good for the next 3 years.
The calendar year then, Wayne, starts on January 1st?
January 1st to December 31st of 2025.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I did have just a question. To me, we've got each section is, a certain amount of dollars, but then we're working on per hour, per piece of equipment pricing. Is it a not to exceed that?
Typically, yes, unless there's emergency conditions after we do spend some of the money that we may have to need their help with in the yearly cycle.
Okay, and in that, those costs, we're comfortable that we can get through the entire system for that lump sum amount of money.
For sure. Yes.
Is there any efficiencies that could be gained to potentially some savings?
Savings for?
Can they work more efficient?
Yeah,
Are there any efficiencies they can gain that maybe we don't use all the money?
Yes, the motorized equipment is, as long as we can do it safely and effectively, not affecting our customers. Some of the backyards in the neighborhoods are not effectively, safely to use those measures, but anytime we can use the larger equipment out in the rural areas to help. You've seen the one area we try and mow that at least every couple of years now, and helps keep those outages down and costs down because now they don't have to hand trim. They don't have to get out the other equipment. So they're able to zip through those areas pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you.
So Chris, the hourly rates in the memo really are mainly for emergency situations should we have to call upon them.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I'm good.
Anyone else? All right, looking for approval of this resolution number 3.
I motion approval for the tree trimming contract.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right, that passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wayne. That was very good.
Well done, Wayne.
Okay, moving on to business, new business number 4, resolution recommending moving forward with the USACE study.
Mark, and the chair and utility advisory board tonight, we have Amy Peterson, our community development director and project manager of the city's strategic initiatives for implementation of the Kinney Corridor Plan here to kind of take this memo and resolution from here. So Amy, welcome and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Utility Director Westhouse and board members. This evening, staff has a report and resolution before you to recommend entering into a feasibility study with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers toward implementation of the Kinney Corridor Plan and Council Resolution number 6234. A condensed version of the history of this project was provided in your report, and a memo with greater depth was referenced as well. During this history, we have engaged the community in a decision that will have transformational effects on the city by removing both our hydro dams. Past and current councils, board members, and staff have been thoughtful and deliberate in weighing the pros and cons of how to move forward with this project. Staff's recommendation to you tonight is no exception. The potential of this project to implement the Kinney Corridor Plan over the next 10 or so years is more than any of us were expecting even just 6 months ago. With us tonight is Nathan Wallerstedt, Chief of the Project Management Branch of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, along with his colleagues, Justin Fisher, Jill Bathke, and Pat Dowd, which are on our remote platform. Chief Wallerstedt will be providing some background on the Section 206 program that will potentially be providing the funding and project that Director Westhouse and I discussed with you at our presentation last month. I'll turn the mic over to Chief Wallerstedt, and then I'll be back to answer questions as you have them yet this evening. Which one do you want up first?
Let's do the PDF.
Maybe we'll put those up and then we can put,
Yeah, slide that over once we, yeah, perfect.
is that good?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. Thanks for having me tonight. My name is Nathan Wallerstedt. I'm a project manager and branch chief with the St. Paul District Corps of Engineers. As Amy introduced, we've got a few folks with us on our team tonight. I'll try to answer any questions you have. I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking a little bit about the Army Corps. Not sure, if folks understand what we do or what we're all involved in. A little bit about the program that we've been discussing with the city and the staff, and then talk a little bit about our feasibility study process, cost sharing, and kind of into implementation. Feel free to jump in if you've got questions. So a little bit about the Army Corps of Engineers. We are part of the Army. We're under Department of Defense. We are primarily a civilian organization. About 97% of us are engineers, biologists, archaeologists, economists in a civilian capacity. But we do have a colonel. He's our district commander, and so he's my boss. A little bit about the Corps. What do? We try to solve water resource related problems. We kind of have three different mission areas. First, flood risk management. So if you're familiar with building levees and flood walls, either on a coastal or a riverine environment, that's kind of mission number one, protecting property and people from catastrophic flooding. Mission number two, navigation on the Mississippi River, keeping a 9-foot channel open for barge traffic, moving goods up and down the river. Mission number three, ecosystem restoration. So that's really what we're going to talk a little bit more about tonight, but really looking at different habitats that have been degraded over time, typically human actions that have been, happened over the years, and trying to enhance that into a better habitat. So yeah, that's a little bit about the Corps. What are we here tonight to talk a little bit about is one of our ecosystem restoration program authorities. It falls underneath what we call the Continuing Authorities Program, or CAP. This is a group of legislative authorities given to us by Congress that have already been approved. So these are typically smaller efforts. So we do not need to specifically seek Congress permission to go implement these types of things. We have the authority to do it. We just kind of have to go through our process. So, somebody have something? Perfect, it works. No. Yeah, no worries, thank you. All right, thanks. So Continuing Authorities Program, ecosystem restoration, right? So the authority that is most applicable to River Falls and potentially looking at dam removal is our Section 206 Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Program. That comes out of, Section 206 is a subsection of WRDA, or the Water Resources Development Act of 1996. So that's the authority we can use to go do this. Kind of scrolling down to the bottom, kind of the bottom line up front, study costs. So this is kind of where we are right now. We are in the study phase, or the very initial phase of looking at this. So why is the Corps here today, right? So Kinney River and the dams here in River Falls, I mean, have been talked about for, I've heard of, rumblings of them for like 10 years or more. We've had people even in our office that are like River Falls natives that have shown interest in, well, what if we could remove these, that kind of thing. Amy gave him a little update on, the city's direction and vision over the last several years. And so actually in December of 2020, City of River Falls reached out to the Corps of Engineers and asked us to potentially study this project under Section 206. So took a little while, about a year and a half, but we received some initial funding, that first $100,000 that is shown right here. We received that last November. So I kind of dove in, start looking at, the information that's already out there, start looking at, okay, what would this look like? Is this, potentially feasible? Does this fit within the Corps' authorities? Is this something that we can be involved in? Long story short, looked at that. Yes, we do agree that this, idea has potential. It is certainly within our realm of the work that we help do. And so really that, we're here tonight to talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about the potential next steps. Kind of above that first $100,000, that's 100% federal that we're currently working on right now. The rest of the study cost is split 50-50, so that's 50% federal, 50% non-federal, and typically that non-federal share can come from any number of sources, state, local, otherwise. It could even be federal if that other federal entity were to allow it to be that way. If you get through the study phase and find out that there's a project that is worth pursuing here, and basically the benefits or the biological, the environmental benefits outweigh the costs. Implementation or construction of the project is cost shared 65% federal, 35% non-federal. But because this is a continuing authorities program, our federal contribution is capped out at $10 million. So that is the most under this authority that we federally can contribute to any specific project. So plus or minus 65, 35 cost share, you're looking at about a $15-ish million project all in, could be cost shared if that is of interest. So with that, I will stop for a second before we sort of move into some of the specifics of the feasibility study. And I think we've got myself and some folks online, and I guess we can start any questions and I'll transfer to a different slide.
I did have one question. Did you reach out to the city of River Falls, or did they reach out to you?
That's a good question. Typically, and I mean, there's probably nuances in here. I know that we got a letter from the city of River Falls requesting the study. Typically, folks contact us first, but like I guess I mentioned, I know there's a long history of interest kind of in the idea. So I think that ultimately the city probably got our information through some of those local community groups or through Trout Unlimited or some of those folks who were interested in dam removal.
So Nathan, going back to your steps here.
Yep.
The first one is what we're talking about here. Local sponsor notifies Corps of problem. And as I understand, that was done in a January 2022 letter. Is that correct? That's what I've heard, that there's some place in here that says there was an original contact with the city, from the city to the Corps of Engineers. And part of this is a lot of this is just terminology. So the Corps of Engineers terminology is the problem. So what did we ask as the problem to be solved, I guess? Was it how to remove 2 dams, or how to re-engage to try to figure out, reevaluate what we want to do? Because somewhere in this, it indicates that we could be looking at taking out 1 dam or 2 dams. And I'm just curious, and I don't, has the board seen what this initial letter was, if there was a letter?
I think I have a copy of it, if you want me to grab it quick.
Well, I do, I think for completeness, we all should see it. And then you used the term where we're at, that you already did a feasibility to see if this project was feasible, and you said it is.
Yeah, so I should clarify that a little bit. So we did, and then part of that first initial $100,000, we do what's called a federal interest determination, right? And so we are really not doing any feasibility work. We were looking, or we always are looking at what is the existing information that's out there and available. In the case of River Falls in the 2 dams, right? I mean, it's been studied a lot. There's a lot of available information.
Right. But I guess, and here's my other hang up. Our whole resolution is to improve a feasibility study. And I believe it's very feasible to remove those 2 dams, or it's very feasible to remove 1 and leave 1, or it's feasible to leave them both in. So I don't know how, if, again, I look at this chart and it kind of says we define a problem, we study what we need to do to solve that problem, and we put the documents together and we implement the problem solution. And we talk about a seat at the table. I'm not sure when is anybody going to be at the table to talk about if there are other options, or if the problem is just how to remove 2 dams. And I guess that's where I'm confused at kind of the terminology and the process. But maybe you're going to get to that, and I should wait.
Yeah, we can certainly talk a little bit about that. Yeah, I do want to talk about the process, and I think I can answer some of your questions regarding study and kind of, the course process and why we kind of have to do what we need to do. I'm going to ask Jill. Jill, were you able to get on? I'm not seeing you on WebEx, but...
hopefully you can hear me okay right now.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the timeline. And did you hear those questions regarding kind of the study, our study process, and kind of why we're doing what we're doing and what that all entails? Or would be doing?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can just introduce myself. I'm Jill Bathke. I am a water resource planner with the Corps, and I help guide the team through what is referred to as a feasibility study. And really, from the Corps' perspective, we use the term feasibility study, and it seems like it would be pretty straightforward. It's either feasible or not. But there are specific federal regulations that define how we do this process, and I think what's pulled up here on the slide here kind of walks through that feasibility study process. But overall, the purpose is to identify, evaluate, and recommend to the core decision makers what a workable solution to a problem could be. And so in the Corps, this process is called plan formulation. And so you can see here on this flow chart, we go through initial scoping where we define the problems and opportunity. We go through a process where we identify existing and future conditions. And thankfully, for your particular project, a lot of that's been done. As you mentioned, there's a lot of existing information. And so to the extent practical, the Corps will definitely rely on that information in that existing and future condition evaluation, because that really sets the stage for us to identify what solutions may be possible. And the solutions we're looking for are aquatic ecosystem restoration. So things that would improve the aquatic ecosystem in River Falls. And so one of the major components could be dam removal. And we'll look at other alternatives that might include one or both dams or other things that could improve aquatic ecosystem associated with some of the problems and opportunities we define. And then we will evaluate those alternatives and come up with a tentatively selected plan, which we will propose to the public and to you all as we go through that process. So that's just like a big 10,000-foot overview of our feasibility process. It's kind of a stepwise process to determine, are we in compliance with the Corps' laws and regulations as it applies to this CAP project.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And I think just kind of one thing to add to on the feasibility process and kind of why do we need to do it. I think, your statement about, is it feasible? Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, if you have the money and you want to spend it on this, removing dams is feasible. I think the biggest challenge or the thing that the Corps needs to is we're looking at this particular feasibility study in our process is a federal government investment decision, right? Should the Corps or the taxpayers invest money in dam removal or ecosystem restoration in River Falls, right? Is the bang worth the buck, right? So that's really what our process is focused on, is like for us to make that investment decision as much as it is to provide, technical information about how it's going to be done and how much it's going to cost. But so while some of it probably feels repetitive, some of it just has to be done for us to make that investment decision. But the technical stuff we will continue. I mean, we'll use all the technical data that's available. Does that help a little with that?
Nathan, can I just take a brief shot, just at Mark's question, just to backtrack a little bit about who contacted who, and you said, I'm not really sure. So, I mean, that is a little nuanced. So, the City of River Falls had a relationship with the Army Corps because you did about $120,000 worth of studies for us through the relicensing process. They're very familiar with our project. They know the ultimate goal of the city for dam removal. Mm-hmm. It was last November, late November, either you or your partner called me and said, hey, we were awarded $10 million for a potential project. Would you be interested in a federal interest determination? And that's when in January, when I sent them the letter to let them know, yeah, we're interested in you just doing a FID.
Okay, I just needed that clarification, yeah. Kevin, when that was very good, because I think at the council meeting, you said they reached out to you.
Well, they did in November. So we had the relationship previously. I wasn't aware of the $10 million project. And I think there was a phone call that said, hey, we have this. Yeah. And that's when I said, hey, I remember there was a kind of an excited phone call, like, hey, we need to talk soon. And I was like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. But they're like, we're pretty excited about this. So so it's nuanced in the fact we had a relationship. This new piece of this was when they came to me and said, hey.
And we got the funding to look
We had the funding. And then I go to Scott and said, Jesus, Scott, I think I remember seeing in the hallway. I remember, hey, we might have $10 million coming our way or something like to that effect. Mm-hmm. So that was how that worked, Mark.
Yep. So I think part of it, too, is to try to understand, I think Jill just said aquatic restoration, aquatic ecosystem restoration. Mm-hmm. And why does that a dam removal included in that discussion? Because the river can have quite a aquatic process as it is. Right. In fact, if I could, I was thinking this might be a good place to interject what Mr. Warwath from the Trout Unlimited said. And he said that the Trout Unlimited recognizes the Kinney as an outstanding. I don't know if you can get better than outstanding. Mm-hmm. Can you? Can anybody say that you can get better than outstanding? And that's with 2 dams and 2 impoundments. So I don't get it. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to figure out what an aquatic ecosystem restoration and dam removal have in common.
Member Spafford, it is not an outstanding resource for the mile between and around the impoundments or the 31 acres that's related to the impoundments and the dams. So it's outstanding below the dams, it's outstanding above the dams. It is not outstanding in the project area that we're talking about. So why they're interested is it's aquatic restoration in the area that's currently impounded and impacted by the dams. So that's I don't know how to, that's the connection. The connection is above the impoundments and the dams, outstanding. Below the impoundments and the dams, outstanding. In the middle, not so outstanding.
Scott,
And that comes from who? The DNR says that the entire system is good. So I don't know where you heard that from.
That's not what the DNR said to us. They always make the caveat that it's not the area included with the impoundments. In many of the public meetings I've been in our communication with the DNR, they don't classify the area that's impounded as an outstanding resource. They may on a map that shows the Kinney and classifies the Kinney as an outstanding, but clearly there's more potential for aquatic resources and ecosystem in the area of the impoundments. I think that's been pretty consistent throughout this whole process, going back to tech talks and the whole big process. And that's why the federal government would be interested. They're not interested in improving the area of the Kinney that's already an outstanding resource. The letter back to us on the continuing authorities program sheet is on the FID was, and they've got a couple different options, like Member Toom has indicated. They've got the Fed. We don't do anything. It's not our problem. It's not a Fed project. Status quo. The city's going to remove the lower. That's their status quo. And then they say, what if we just remove the lower or help the city remove the lower? What would that impact be? And then it says, what if we took out both dams and what would that impact be? So that under the Fed, they're saying, it looks like there's a federal interest in taking them both out and doing 31 acres and a mile of restoration. We're not sure about just helping with the lower. That would have to be determined in the feasibility. And of course, in the status quo, they're saying there is no, if we just let the city do their thing, we don't need to get involved. That's for them to determine. So that's the three that they identified in the FID that I recall. But they may, as part of their feasibility, decide that there's other options they want to review. But I think your point was well made. It's not to determine for the city if it's feasible. It's to determine if the federal government wants to put $10 million into the project and if there's enough value for the federal taxpayers to do so. And they could come back to us and say, yeah, just helping you with the lower, not enough federal benefit. Nah, helping, you got to take out both. There's not enough benefit for us. Or they could say, yeah, there's enough benefit on the lower alone, and here's how much we can put into that, 65%. And we think it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. And then they'll say, yeah, we are interested in the upper and the lower, but it's going to cost more than our 10 million. Do you want to do it? So that's just from a broad perspective, that's where we're at as staff, that this is directly related to the marching orders that the community gave us through the resolution by council to find a feasible, financially responsible way to achieve the vision. And we were happy to have the Army Corps. It was a moment of joy to say, whoa, this matches up pretty good. But it's going to change some assumptions about doing the lower first and having to wait and get some more people involved in the process.
And how, just to follow up on that, Mr. Simpson, how did that feel when the council says we're going to wait till 2035, 2040, and then the $10 million comes along and we jump for joy because we're not sticking to our word? And that's what I think has bothered most of the people I've talked to. And the majority of the city council that voted on that aren't even on the council anymore. And I was listening to the last council meeting, and Ms. Mueller was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, the resolution does not say that we will keep the dam in place till 2035 or 40. It says we have a target It had a target for the lower and a target for the upper. That's what the resolution says.
But there was something in there that said unless we can prove that there's some type of an ecosystem, then we'll move it up. I don't remember anything else.
Again, we can read the resolution together, but I would suggest that I was involved in the whole process to date, and there was no chiseled in stone, this is the date the lower comes out, and this is the date the upper comes out. Doesn't match the facts as I understand them. That is the goal that we set and what we were trying to figure out. We had the community had no understanding that they'd have any ability to move up the upper dam removal. There was no understanding that this opportunity existed to do so. And so how it feels is like a great opportunity that has pros and cons that has to be evaluated and determined that's how it feels to me, just like everything else in this process. Just like the flood, just like hangups with FERC, just all the things we've had in the process. Every time it's an opportunity to evaluate, figure out what we think the vision is, get feedback from decision makers, and then try to make the best decision going forward. But I'll be honest, or if that's what you're looking for, from staff's perspective, there is no date written in stone for the removal of the lower or the upper. We had a target for both. We had an understanding of what we're trying to shoot at. We had an understanding of what we thought was feasible financially and that it was stepped over time. Then we had a flood. We had to make decisions about the lower, and now we have an opportunity with the program. So that's kind of where we're at, is we've been asked to try to figure out a feasible, financially sustainable way to do it. This looks like worth spending some more money on studies to figure out if it is or not. And if it isn't, then the community has the way to say, nope, we're not going to do it. We're going to go back to the status quo is remove the lower as soon as possible. That's where if we don't go forward with this, that's the status quo. The status quo isn't leave the dams alone and forget the Kinney Corridor plan exists. The status quo is get that lower one out. And we think we have the resources assembled to do so, and we have a plan and all that stuff. But we took a time out because we just think this is too good of an opportunity to not take a look at.
Well, I think a lot of what you said is very helpful, Mr. Simpson. I just, in reading the resolution just doesn't really read quite like what you explained to me. I was a little uncertain what area we were focusing on. I assumed it was just the two impoundments, but there's nothing really that I've seen that defines that. As you know, we spent quite a considerable amount of money doing studies up and down the river for the relicensing, and whether we'll be asked to do more studies on this by any other groups, all the groups that were able to weigh in on the relicensing, are they all going to be able to weigh in on this process? Or if Corps of Engineers comes up with as you say, we don't have to accept their recommendation, but we'll have considerable amount of monies invested. We don't want to do another study that we're not going to use.
And that's the kind of question that'd be good for the Corps to answer. So I think what I hear is your process similar to FERC, where there's a stakeholder and lots of official hearings? I think he can answer that. No.
We've already heard that the KCC wants a seat at the table, and in this process, I don't really see where there's a seat at the table for any outside agencies other than City of River Falls. But I could be wrong. It doesn't.
We understand their relationship to be City to Army Corps.
I think I would like to.
That's what the Army Corps, I think, understands.
I would like to see that in the resolution.
To that point, the resolution can be modified by the advisory board, we put a draft together for you, but you certainly have the ability to modify that. I mean, what staff is looking for is the now therefore be it resolved part, right? So
Yeah, well, I
if
mean,
there's statements in the whereases or things that you don't feel are factual or represent the feelings of the board, then you certainly have the ability to do that. On the second comment, so the first one was about the process. I think we've all felt very processed by FERC.
well, we felt processed by FERC, but we felt very, well, I don't want to say intimidated, but there was very emotional presentations, and the one time that I've been on the board for how many years, the whole place was packed, and it was, I mean, the statements were very specific that this is what we have to do. And, whether it was the city's will or not, whether they were the outspoken minority, I don't know. But, and I know Kellen is very interested on this shared funding, and is the KCC going to just walk away if they don't get exactly what they're looking for? Or, those are other questions, and maybe we don't bog down the whole process, but they come up every meeting.
So if it's okay with you, I would say hold your question on the KCC, and we're happy, Amy and I are happy to try to answer your questions about our predictions. Regarding process and the Army Corps' relationship, I think you've raised a couple questions. One is, how does this process compare? Who is involved in this process? Who's got a right to give an impassioned plea or an emotional request? And does Army Corps take that into consideration or not? Or maybe it weighs less than what FERC weighs it. And then the second question is, what if we spend all this money on studies and we don't get the grant or we don't go forward? Because we asked that same question, like, is this work that is it public work that we can use? Because if our vision is to take out both dams, even if we don't do it with the Army Corps at this time, because we don't think it makes sense after we do feasibility, we don't think you're throwing bad money after good, because it's a 50-50 cost share, and it's information that we'll need when we go to remove the upper dam eventually. So, and maybe you want to speak to those two questions. Like, I don't know if you want to compare your process to FERC, but that's our reference.
I don't know FERC's process, so it's going to be hard for me to compare it totally, but I'll answer your first question. I think Jill will do a good job talking a little bit about our process. First, yeah, all right, so our legal agreement, should we go forth with this, is going to be with the City of River Falls and the Army Corps, right? That's the partnership, 50-50. Obviously, we've got to follow the Corps of Engineers process to get to that decision. I don't know much about FERC's process. I'll let Jill talk about the Corps' process. I mean, we do need to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, right? So, I mean, it is a public process, right? I mean, we are going to engage the public. We are going to seek comments. We are going to produce an environmental assessment, and we will seek comments on that. Jill, do you want to add anything as far as process goes?
Yeah, so there definitely will be a public process. Like I mentioned earlier, when we have what we have, tentatively selected as a plan, we will present that not only to the City of River Falls, you would be part of that process. So it wouldn't necessarily come as a surprise to you, because you'll be participating in the process as we go through the study. But when we get to that tentatively selected plan stage, we will put that out for public review and solicit public comments. And oftentimes during that process, we'll hold public meetings, we'll do online outreach and things of that nature to solicit public comments on the project, and to also understand if there's any concerns or things we may have missed. And that's kind of midway through the process. Earlier in the process, we'll do some initial scoping to tell people that we're going to undertake the study, solicit feedback on any issues we might not be aware of as the Corps of Engineers or things that they think we might need to focus on. So there's kind of two major points for public input. First, very early in the study, where we would be now if we decide to, if the decision is made to move forward, and then kind of midway through the study and when we have a selected plan.
Kellen Wells Mangold has a question. I understand. Kellen?
Can everyone hear me okay?
Oh, is it in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. So right before this, we just had a resolution on tree trimming that was presented by city, and it had 20 pages related to just tree trimming. And it had the exact, dollar amounts that we were spending on everything, diagrams of what we were doing, examples of what we were doing. I think one of the concerns that I have with this resolution as it stands, KCC and their funding aside, there's not much information to go on. It actually doesn't outline. I know we're talking about this right now, but I think talking about it versus actually having it in writing and seeing exactly what is going to be studied, the scope of what is studied. You mentioned that there were some legal documents and things like that. Generally, those things are attached, as part of the contract, and none of that seems to be part of this resolution. And I think that would have been really helpful, just in the scope of this discussion. I think also looking at what is studied, it's been brought up by the UAB. And I don't know if the Corps does this as well, but there's concerns about if a dam is removed, so the one by Cascade Junction Falls, does Cascade Bridge need to be redone? Is that part of this study? And if not, is there somebody else that we need to contract with? And I think those are just some questions that I have right now.
Yeah, so I think it was called Bridge and Infrastructure Modifications. So that is part of what would be included in the feasibility.
Right.
So the Army Corps would study, if you do this, what are the good and the bad things, or not necessarily the bad, but what needs to be done. Because, for example, that's where we got into the staff discussion about stormwater. If all the outfalls are hanging 15 feet in the air over the new river, is stormwater part and parcel to this project, or is it a separate project? And that's one thing. That's one of the main feedbacks we gave the Army Corps is when you do the feasibility, if we go forward with this, and when you do the feasibility, can you look at stormwater as is it an option, is it an alternative, or does it have to be part and parcel to make this worth it for the federal government to get involved?
Right, and I get all of that, Mr. Simpson. I'm just wondering why none of the specifics were attached to this resolution. I mean, most of the documents that we have a ridiculous amount of information that's usually given to us, even just for, lining sewer pipes, something simple like that. This is a really big thing, especially as it relates to the city and all of its different stakeholders, but there's not a lot of information that you're asking us to go on with this resolution at this time. I think that's where I'm at with it. I would ask that the resolution be tabled just for a month until more information could be presented, so that we have a greater scope of what all of this entails.
That's the prerogative of the UAB. I would suggest that we've had several meetings, presentations, packets, links to packets, links to resolutions. We have a whole website for the Kinney Corridor Plan. So it's up to the UAB if you have enough information to go or not. I mean, that's not really something for staff to argue if you have enough information or not. That's for you to determine. We are trying to keep the project moving forward as staff. And so we always have the ability to spend another number of months trying to line up more ducks and get more information. We're suggesting, we thought we have enough information to recommend it. And if you don't have enough information to go forward with it, that's certainly within your purview. So I'm not sure what additional information you'd like, but whatever it is that you think you need to make the decision, that's a request that can be made and we can try to fulfill it.
Well, just that the bridge study is included. That there's obviously some detailed things that have been discussed that are not in our documents, and I don't believe we've ever seen those documents or a list of things that you already identified that would be part of feasibility study. And I'm hung up on that term in all of the 3 pages from the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, one place does it say feasibility study, but now that's our, and so if that's our term, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we're all talking about the same things, and whether some of these, what is the problem? The problem is we've got 2 aging dams that there's a certain strong faction in the city that wants to see them removed. There's some ecological issues, but I don't know anything in the resolution or what we've seen that how much effort's going to be put in to, as Ms. LaRue suggested, cleaning out Lake George and keeping that dam for the remainder of the license and taking the revenue from that. I'm happy to hear that you think you're gonna study those options, but I don't see where it's listed as a checkoff bullet point where we should study this, or so that's all I'm saying, that we can all go on faith that all of that stuff's going to get done, or we could have a little more documentation.
Yeah, and we're not asking you to go on faith. We're providing you a public meeting in which you can ask any question you'd like answered, in which we're prepared to try to answer the questions. And to the extent that we have documents that you don't and that you'd like, I take no disrespect or anything in that, but it is true you have what you have. We also have things. We've got the Army Corps here to answer questions. Staff is available to answer questions. And at the end of the day, if you're still not comfortable making the decision to go forward, that's within your purview. But I would suggest the council has said, keep this project moving. We think there's an opportunity here to keep the project moving, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. And again, to the defense of the council, which I don't know that it's necessary, but I understand there's different feelings about who's driving the bus, and if it's a small faction or a large faction or a vocal minority. Or I would suggest to all of you, the bosses of the city council, the people that make the ultimate policy are advised by you, have strongly and consistently said, we are going towards a vision of removing both dams in this community. There's no wavering that I'm aware of. There isn't any question about what their direction is. The council at any moment can issue a new resolution and say, we changed our mind, we're not doing it. They've not done that. They don't do that in their one-on-ones with me. They haven't done it at a council meeting. They haven't done it when I've asked them if there's any reservation about going down this path. So respectfully, I understand there's feelings that this may not have gone the way people wanted to, or that there's the vocal minority or whatever it is, but the community has adopted a vision of removing both dams in this river. And so staff's marching orders are very clear at this point until somebody tells us differently, which is figure out the best, most efficient, most effective way in a cost efficient manner to get this done. And so that's what we're here to do. Taking more time is acceptable. It's up to the advisory board if they want to do that. And for us to provide whatever information you need. And I wouldn't suggest that your information demands are any different than the council. It's possible. I mean, that's part of this. Part of your advisory role too is saying, oh, staff, you didn't, you brought this decision to the advisory board and they're like, where's the rest of the stuff? Well, that gives us time now before the council to go, well, this is all the things they asked. Let's put that in the memo. So let's answer those questions. So you're doing your role in helping us understand what we haven't provided that should have been provided. And at the end of the day, it's not just a check on it either. It might be that they're not going to be ready either for the same reasons that some of you don't think there's enough information. And I say that with no sarcasm and total respect. Tree trimming is a whole different decision factor. There's a lot more information available to us, and we've done it about 50 times in the life of our utility. We've never ever done this before, removing dams from the river. So part of it is it's not as easy to write memos about dam removal and Army Corps opportunities and floods and other things because they're not something we've done every 2 years for the last 20 years. So yeah, it was a good tree memo, but it's a different animal than what we're dealt with. So we want to try to get it right.
Chief, if I could, how closely are you tied with the U.S. Department of Energy?
Not over, no, I mean, we're not connected.
Okay. All right, I'll save this then. Let you continue unless there was anybody else who had anything.
There was one question at the last meeting that I watched, I wasn't here, of whose process is this? Like who, and I think, and then it was also asked, was it asked at a council meeting too?
Yeah, maybe.
And I think I said, it's the Army Corps' process. So I guess, do you want to speak to that? Yes, it's a public process, but it's not the city's, we're not hiring you to be our consultant.
Right. No, I mean, we are, again, trying to answer that, federal investment decision. It is our process that we're going to go through. Now, when we talk about, a couple of questions came up about what's the scope. We have some flexibility to look at different things if that is what is of interest to the community to help be more informed. But the process, like the public process, the document that we produce at the end that provides recommendations, I mean, that is our process. But again, we have flexibility with what information is gathered to help make that decision, that kind of stuff. Like the scope we can tailor. I mean, obviously words of caution. If we make the scope really big, things cost more, right? We can't do more with the same. So if we got to kind of keep it in the box, right? But if there are things of interest, whatever that is, I mean, that's not off the table. And it is, I respect the comments about it'd be nice if this was all laid out. I agree. All I can say is it will get laid out. Our process is a little bit such that, we'll go so far, but really we kind of need that local commitment before we'll take it all the way, right? But if there's simple stuff like you guys want to know, hey, are you guys going to look at this? Yeah, we can scope that in and we can figure that kind of stuff out.
I think that might be one thing that's making me nervous, and maybe others on this board, is that in the resolution it says a feasibility study is the first step in the process to determine the scope of the project. And we don't know what that is, and we don't know what the city has told you. We don't know what you've told the city of what is our scope.
Right.
So
So right now, I can say in general, our scope is we're looking at that reach of the river, lower dam, upper dam, everything in between, and then including the storm sewer concern, because we know that is going to be a potential issue that really can't be separated. We need to at least understand how it's going to work. I mean, that is the general scope of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the obvious oversights is if we would have provided the advisory board the FID, that would have answered some of these questions. I mean, I'm able to recite the FID or answer the questions, but kind of as we talked about, there was three alternatives, or I guess you call them
alternatives.
Yeah. Alternative A is no action. So alternative A is kind of what city staff considers the status quo, no federal intervention. Alternative B was removal of Powell Falls and stream restoration. So that was half a mile of stream and 15 acres of habitat, and just the lower. And then the alternative C is the removal of Powell and Junction Falls and stream restoration. So that was 1 mile of river and 31 acres of habitat, both the impoundments and just a little bit more than the impoundments. And we're talking, I think we were planning to have Amy present that, but
Actually, you may recall, we presented the alternatives last meeting. There were A, B, C, and then we had a D, right? Which was C plus the stormwater. That's what we covered at the last meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So that's where we asked the Army Corps, did you think about what we consider the Riverwalk project or the Lake George stormwater interceptor? Has been called a bunch of different names. Like, how do we get all this downtown stormwater into something away from the river, treat it, and then let it go back into the river? Some of you are familiar with that. That project was dam agnostic. So the city did that study and that plan, and you can keep the dams in or take the dams out. But it removes all the stormwater from the river, cleans it up, and then puts it back into either the impoundment or the river with no dam. And so we said, well, what do you guys think about that? And they said, we can see how we would get there, that this is part of the project. And then they also said, do you want to include it in the project? Because it'll cost more. It keep you going past that $10 million. And I think we joked, that's all right, we'll just talk to Congress about getting the 10 million cap moved up to 15 or 20.
It's always an option. It's debated every so often.
Like every time we have an obstacle on this project, we just go figure out how to move it around. So $10 million is an obstacle today, but they haven't moved that up in 7 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So inflation's high, Social Security, Medicaid, people are getting 8.7%. We should be able to move the 10 million cap.
That does take an act of Congress, though. We are not allowed to adjust the ceiling.
So that's the scope D that would have been covered in last month's presentation, was the three that Army Corps put in the FID plus then ours. And so what we were told by Army Corps, and now that we have you on the spot, is it's their process, but they're not going to ignore us. So if we, they're going to be advised by us as a primary advisor. And so we're able to say things like, hey, we have this quarry over here that, you don't need to study 12 sites to put sediment. You can look at this site and one other site or something that probably is good enough. And they're not saying, well, we'll take it from here, leave us alone. They're saying, yeah, we'll take that input from the city on that.
It's our process, but in the end, we all want the project to be successful in theory, right? So, certainly going to take whatever input we can to make it a successful project. That's our goal. And obviously, when we talk about scope and stuff, yes, we do need to keep the scope sort of focused on that ecosystem restoration stuff. We can't go look at city streets, and we got to stay in the river corridor and kind of in that world.
Can you talk a little bit about the federal investment criteria that would determine whether or not this is a project that
it's
you
a
want
little
that
bit
you want to take on?
interesting. Jill, I'm going to defer to you because we do an interesting calculation that looks at habitat units. Jill, go. You're the best and probably explain.
Yeah, I can explain that a little bit. So for this type of project, for an aquatic ecosystem project, we have to show that there is like a net gain in aquatic benefits achieved. And there's different modeling that allows us to do that to show, we're creating habitat. We can also look at like water quality parameters, like maybe cooler water or less turbid water, things of that nature. And we're actually just trying to quantify what is that aquatic benefit. And that's how we really justify these types of projects in the aquatic ecosystem type world under that federal interest. So that's the kind of the gain that we need to show here. The benefits of the project are those aquatic ecosystem benefits. And we will evaluate the benefits of all the alternatives, and we always are comparing them against doing nothing. So we always have to show that our action that we're going to take would have a net aquatic benefit over doing nothing. And I think one other thing I just want to touch on briefly that was addressed, how will we look at the existing infrastructure? That's a really great question, and that's something that we're required to do. We need to evaluate the effects of the different alternatives, and so we need to be able to understand what are the beneficial effects, like I just talked about, and then the potential adverse effects of the same action. So we do look at that holistically, and we're required to under various environmental laws and regulations.
That's very helpful.
Could I interject just a little bit, just to give it Kevin, taking this, I'm extremely complex, right? This is a 10-year process with meetings and committees. And, really, Scott said it, and we said it in the past, and it's almost ad nauseum now. City's committed to taking 2 dams out. Army Corps says, hey, we might have $10 million available to help you with that process. I feel like I would be remiss by not bringing this to you to discuss this opportunity to tackle a project that we are eventually going to do, probably between 2035 or 2040, potentially, according to the February of 2018 document. And really what this opportunity does is it may allow us to get that project at 40 or 50 cents on the dollar 5 to 10 years earlier. Really, that's, if I want to make it the complex a little simpler, I think that's kind of what this does. Is it perfect? No. Are there going to be bumps along the way? Yes. But I think there's some money to allow us to do what we're eventually going to do anyway, and there'll be a sale.
I don't know how much longer everyone wants to continue to talk about this, but I would like to propose that the resolution is tabled until next month, and that more documentation be provided. A document that outlines the scope of the studies that will be done, the type of work being done, the process for the community input to be outlined. And it would also be helpful, just so that it's part of the entire packet, that a copy of the letter from the city to the Corps to the city, whatever started this process, be included in the packet.
You might want to ask if that was a motion, Mark.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out here. That's, I think before we go there, I do want to read something, and the reason that I asked Chief what kind of connection they have with the Department of Energy is the U.S. currently gets bear with me here, 6.3% of its electricity from hydros and 31% 0.5% of it is renewable electricity generated from hydro facilities. To proven providing a reliable and flexible source of carbon-free power, right? That's where that's the big push, that's the big PC nowadays, right? Hydropower is key to building 100%, and that's what our president has asked for, 100% clean energy future. So what just was signed by President Biden on November 15th of 2021? $1.2 trillion long-term investment in the nation's infrastructure. It's called the BIL, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. It provides funding to ensure the United States advances and deploys new technologies while keeping existing clean energy sources online. And this is where I feel that we're going against the grain of what the public wants. Okay, so the bill, which is called the BIL bill, provides $125 million in additional funding for Section 242, Hydroelectric Production Incentive Program. In addition, the bill provides $630 million, Section 243, Hydroelectric Efficiency Improvement Incentives Program. And the new Section 247, Maintaining and Enhancing Hydroelectricity Incentives Program to enable facilities to improve. So we're talking about, is there money out there? There's a lot of money out there. What is it going to improve? The efficiency, grid resilience, dam safety, environmental conditions, which includes sediment transport, and to improve recreation access to projects' vicinity. In addition to this funding, to these incentive programs, the bill authorizes $146 million for fiscal years 2022 to 2025 for water power research led by the Water Power Technologies Office. So why are we going against the grain when we've got cities like Las Vegas that have to shut themselves down? We've got rolling blackouts and things like that. That's why I'm trying to figure out, we got two government agencies and they seems like they're, and I'm not saying that this is what the Corps is up to, but this seems like what our city is asking the Corps to do is to go against the Department of Energy. I just thought that was worthy of getting that out there.
Yeah, so in that exact same bill, there's additional money for the 206 program. So the Army Corps has been asked to do more water resource eco restoration, and respectfully, nothing in the BIL changed the FERC process. So Congress is still saying our dam is the Hoover Dam. You got to go through the same process, even though it's statistically insignificant in your numbers for renewables. So it's, again, I want to be respectful, but it is not the same ballgame. The money for hydropower research and improvement has nothing to do with our little dam. That Congress has said it's not the same, and they allocated lots of money for hydro. That's absolutely correct. In the same exact bipartisan bill, there's money specifically for the 206 program, of which we're going to try to get, because they went from 65% federal match to 100% federal match. So it's probably true that DOE and Army Corps and a dozen other agencies were given different messages with the same bill. I wouldn't argue that, given what I've worked with in different agencies, but I don't think our dam is even on the radar for those other bipartisan programs.
I guess it wasn't that, Mr. Simpson, it was the point that I was trying to make. And the point was renewable energy. And we're number 2 in the US because why? Because we pay for it. We pay to get to that level. We passed that a year or so ago where we paid, I think it's $12,000 so that we could be on a list that says that our public facilities are powered by renewable energy. Does that sound
No,
correct?
I don't think that's an accurate depiction. I think we put our money where our mouth is, and we're paying, and it's going to resources that are renewable. And so, I mean, I think we followed our ethic, which is we should do that. But the community has also said the merits of the renewable energy at the hydro is not where we should put our long-term investment. If we want to do more renewable energy, it's not, the benefits don't outweigh the cost, environmentally or financially or socially or politically. We went through that whole process already, and I believe the communities spoke.
I don't believe they did. So
I understand.
We'll
your
differ in that
perspective.
at this point, but thanks.
And they could speak again differently, but we can only operate under what we've been told to do by the elected folks who passed the resolution.
So Kellen, I guess it's up to you at this point if you would like to create a motion to table this for 1 month. I'm not sure what kind of a hardship that's going to cause the city at this point. Maybe somebody wants to talk to that.
It's not a hardship for me. It's Scott.
Chris, do you have anything to interject on that from the city council's point of view?
I think it would be good to get as much information as possible to make the most informed decision on this. And I know we didn't talk about the funding and half and all that. I'm not real comfortable with how that's coming together either. So I would prefer to sit tight on this and maybe get some more information.
Can you speak some more on that so we can clear that up, Chris? No.
It looks like we're asking the KCC to pay half of the study. And I know this board has brought up basically every meeting since I've been sitting on it. They claimed that they were going to pay, was it $70,000, Kevin, to the initial relicensing of the dam?
That was six, close to 70.
And they've paid how much to date?
They're just 25,000 short of that goal.
Oh, okay. So we're going to take them on their word. They're going to come through on this one. That's where I have a little bit of a
I'll
concern.
serve this one to Scott.
We have a number of partnerships in the city in which we don't require cash on delivery. So we didn't do that with the baseball stadium. We have not done that with lots of partnerships. So that's a decision that the utility advisory board and the council have to determine if they're willing to take them on their word or not. So,
As a business owner, I would never do that in a million years. I can't fathom doing that with ratepayers' money. There's no way.
yeah, the difference here is we are suggesting as staff that this is a good project to proceed with, even if you didn't receive the money from the KCC. And so the fact that you have a community partner that's indicated a willingness to provide funding for something that we believe as staff already has merit, that's where I see the difference is, and do we want to tighten up their receipts, so to speak, and get their invoices in full? I think the answer is yes. And I think what I have said to them directly is it ought to come before the council goes forward with a feasibility study, right? Let's get your first commitment paid before you ask us to take your word on another commitment. So I agree with the utility advisory board on that. I believe that we're in the same boat. I also think that you have a role to play in providing leverage. So if you pass a resolution that says you're doing this and the KCC is providing this match, it helps us hold them accountable for the match that they've publicly said they're going to provide.
In the resolution, there's no, if they don't come through, what are they going to just walk away? I mean, what's the recourse if they don't follow through? What does the city set out with them?
I think the recourse is they lose their credibility going forward for the same
I think
reason.
they already have with not paying their first bill. That's where I have a problem, and I have a concern that the city would say, oh, well, that was okay the one time and you'll be good this time. That that just doesn't fly for me.
Yeah, and I think that's
I can't do it.
Yeah, that's not what I suggested. What I suggested is you would make them come due on the first bill before you let them incur the second bill. So but I wouldn't let them not paying the first bill keep them from giving us the opportunity to help us with the second one. And this is not the only funding source. Again, these things are in motion. We're working on stuff. We also had a meeting with a DNR about water resources grant of $50,000 that could be applied to the feasibility. As the Army Corps has indicated, if we can find other federal monies to help with the feasibility, that's fine with them too. So we're not just counting on the KCC. It's true, we always count on the ratepayers. I mean, that's where ultimately all of this falls if we can't find alternative sources for it.
I think this might be a good point, a good point for our new members to hear, because I asked you this question, Mr. Simpson, on March 15th of 2021. I asked you, what kind of ability do we have to hold them accountable? Is there a gentleman's agreement? And this is a quote from you. There is not a gentleman's agreement, but that there is a MOU with the KCC that they are going to basically put their money where their mouth is. To say it not eloquently, Kevin was hoping for eloquent words, but I think the grand bargain or the great compromise is that the lower dam is going to give these groups the opportunity to demonstrate, and this is where I loved your wisdom, and I've really held on to this, that they can raise the money, and if they can't, then the UAB and the council are going to certainly have some decisions when it comes to authorizing the removal of the upper dam. So that has been said also in the community, and I think frankly that we get some consternation on the stakeholders' side that in the end, the council is going to vote to take out the upper dam, and frankly, they have the opportunity to demonstrate that this is as easy as they said it might be. And then you did go on to explain in detail what no tax levy meant, which was really good for us. And this was well over a year ago. And so I'm with you. I am not interested in hearing any more from the KCC. And I don't think that they should be on this as a stakeholder. I listened to the council meeting and listened to Duke, how he said it, and it was just it wasn't didn't sit well with me at all. So I guess at this point, Kellen, there's an opportunity for you to make a motion to table this, or we could move on with a motion to accept the resolution as written and make some amendments to it. So I guess we have two options, and I don't think I'm being very formal here.
I'm really sorry that I can't be with you all tonight. It would be more fun in River Falls than Indianapolis right now. But before we get to the next steps, I think it would just be helpful if city staff also for the next meeting could provide the UAB with some answers regarding the KCC, because I understand that we need to pretty much get money wherever it can come from at this point. But with regards to the KCC and the MOU, does the KCC now have fundraising milestones that have been set by the city so that we can sort of evaluate that and see how they're coming along with all their different, efforts? Also, can we get a report of how many unique donors have actually contributed actual financial donations? I understand, there was the different pots, but it would be nice to know how many actual donors they have, because I think it would give us a better scope of who's, if it's really broad, that would be really great to know. And then just also perusing their site, because I was looking at the UAB site, I was looking at the Community Corridor Plan site and everybody's site. One of the things I noticed about the KCC is that their certificates from the state of Wisconsin, naming them as a charitable organization, it expired on July 31st of this year. If they could provide an updated copy, and I'm sure they have it, it's just not posted to their website, and that's really the only source of information, that would also be really helpful. At this time, I do move or make a motion that we table this resolution until more information as previously outlined or requested is provided by city staff.
Okay, is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, this is an opportunity for some discussion. Anybody have any discussion?
Question, moving forward on the feasibility study is not contingent on participation of the KCC, correct?
It'd only be contingent if that's what the council ultimately puts in their resolution. So it could, I guess, I'm not trying to sit the fence, I'm saying it depends on how the wording comes out from the council. Or by extension, if the UAB was like, we're fine going forward, but only if you can have $160,000 deposited in the account by the KCC. I mean, I'm not trying to give you an outrageous, I mean, you can make whatever reasonable provisions you think are in the best interest of the city. I'm not recommending or advising that. I'm just saying that's a purview. And Chair Spafford, either of those options that you gave the group is in order. So you can table it, you can modify it. So the tabling mode would be in order. And if you do that, then it's always the black hole of Robert's rules, which it's until an undetermined date. And so that leaves staff to figure out what does that mean. So you can table it until a certain point, or you can just say, you can also not take action and just move on as the chair. So that's an option too. And then it doesn't get that. So probably the table makes sense because it's more of an affirmative thing. If you have, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you have 3 votes to table, then it would table it. It would be indefinite. We'd figure out what that means. Bring it back when we think we have what you want. And if the table doesn't pass, then you have to do something else. Then a motion to pass it would be in order, typically before you would modify it.
Any other discussions?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't count right. You've got 6 members attending, so you got 4 votes to table.
Right. Anyone else? I guess at this point, I'll just state my opinion, and that would be that I would vote to not accept this motion, that I'm willing to vote and make an amendment to the current resolution. So I just wanted to lay that on the table. I've been around enough to know enough, and I appreciate the people who haven't.
My preference is to involve the KCC as they can be made whole on their previous debt obligation to their previous commitment. If that can be written in, terrific. That's my main hang up right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would also help the board if they already have that commitment in some way, shape, or form. Anything that sort of reinforces that, just given the history with the group and their inability at this point to be current on what they've said that they would contribute, I think it would go a long way in restoring some faith.
Does anyone have any questions for our chief at this point? I'm feeling a little bad. I should let him sit down.
Good, we're good. He looks mildly entertained.
Sorry.
I appreciate you guys allowing me to be here tonight. And I hope we were able to answer some of your questions.
Yeah, you were.
Thank you.
Member Spafford, can I make one comment about the KCC just for point of information? So there could be a reasonable argument made that the city paused our request for them to pay up on the 60,000. So I'm not sure that I would agree with that argument, but and it would have been in August, I guess, when the Army Corps opportunity came available to us. We said the city is pausing our process. I believe KCC took that as, oh, well, if you're going to go down a different path, we're not going to keep paying you for the old path. That's not how staff interpreted it. We believe we already did the work that we agreed we were going to get money from, but they, in correspondence to us, have given me the indication that they think if we took the time out, then why, they're not past due from an invoice perspective. They're just, we paused the work. I think we would say as staff, the work's already been done. We'd like to get that. And then I did recently affirmatively say that to KCC, that no, we are talking about a different process, but we already did the other process, and it would be very important for the council and UAB to see that money in the tank. So, but to be fair, you could make an argument that we as the city staff paused the LOA number one, therefore their payments are not in arrears. So I don't want to perpetuate people's concern about the KCC, even though I share some of it. I think they can make an argument that they have paid us some money and they're willing to pay us money when we figure out what we're doing. Which has been the fun of this whole process.
Any more discussion? Questions, comments from anyone? Lene, I did not write down Kellen's motion. Did you happen to catch it? Could you turn your mic, please? Sorry.
He had said to move to table the resolution until there's more information. And then Chris seconded it. And then Adam piped in and talked about the feasibility being contingent on the KCC. And then Scott was talking about the wording for council. And then some more discussion. You said you didn't want to accept the motion to make it, you wanted to make amendments to the current resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adam talked about the KCC to be included into that resolution about their commitment to the funding.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kellen said about helping to reinforce that commitment. And then Scott just talked about the process with the LOA.
So the motion was to table.
Yeah, it was tabled.
Great. So would anybody prefer to make an amendment to the motion so that we can set a hard date? Because I think we need that in there.
I think my original was that we table it until next month when we have our next meeting, so that we can have, we can not stall the process. Because I believe in listening to Mr. Simpson that we should be able to get whatever information we request. And I'll be happy to send, Lene, I'll just send you an email, and also you, Kevin, just outlining some things. And I would encourage the rest of the board to do so as well. So just tabling until next month, and hopefully this resolution comes back to us a little bit more flushed out, with more details, like pretty much everything else that we get.
I think that's a fair assessment to set a timeline to it for next month.
So is everybody, are we okay with doing this without an amendment to the original? And just saying that Kellen's motion is to table the resolution until November 21st, 2022, to gather more information.
Well, Mark, I think that in the process of gathering more information, the resolution might be amended through that process potentially to highlight the specific information that we're requesting. I also know that, you know, if it comes to us next month and it still isn't sort of where I guess the board feels it could be, we can make our own amendments at that time.
I think you left it pretty vague, though, when you said more information. So I was just trying to be more specific. Or is that generalization good enough?
Yeah. I said that I'll email Lene, and I would encourage the other board members to do so, requesting that information. You know, if we want to set a timeline, let's get Lene and Kevin some requests within, what's today? 17th. No later than Tuesday, October 25th.
And just to, Kellen, one piece of clarification. So Amy Peterson is kind of the project manager, and Amy is the author of this resolution and memo. So we'll also work very heavily with Amy Peterson to complete this, and she was the author of the memo and resolution.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So I don't know if the UAB is leaning towards tabling, but if you are, would you consider having a special meeting prior to the 21st? I think if you push it to the 21st, you've eliminated consideration by the council in December, which perhaps that's what you want to do. But I think the practical schedule is if you don't meet until the 21st, it's not going to make the 22nd council meeting. It would be difficult to make the 8th, and we don't normally meet on the 22nd. Now, the council could say we're going to meet on the 22nd because it's important to get through, but if the UAB if staff can get you the information you need, it would be better for us if we tried to have a special meeting of the UAB earlier in the month of November, because I think it will really, and that, just so you know why staff always seems to have this urgency or telling you hurry up and wait, it's because we just know the way these government processes work is every time we miss a meeting or we move it back, it's more and more and more, and frankly, we'd like to keep the Army Corps hasn't said if you don't get us this by this date, we're walking away. That's not, so I don't want to give you a false sense of urgency, but 1 month turns into 3, turns into 6, turns into a lot. So that'd be my only request is leave the date, with it, say within, if you're to clarify the motion, within 30 days. And then we would work with the chair to try to see if we can get that done sooner, because otherwise I don't think the council will likely be reviewing this. I also think there's some disadvantages of that because it takes the heat off of KCC a little bit. I don't want to keep giving another 30, 60 days. I'm trying on your behalf and the council and the community's behalf to try to keep their feet to the fire to say, hey, we got a meeting on October 25th scheduled. What are we going to be able to say to the council on the 25th? I'd like to try to keep that in 2022. If we start pushing to 23, it'll be trouble, because then we'll be talking about March or April, just predicting how holiday schedules and things work for people.
And I'll work closely with the chair and vice chair and the UAB to try to work on a date then in earlier November and a special meeting. That might be our November meeting as well.
And staff is still willing to go forward without tabling it. But if you're going to table it, we'd like you to keep to consider meeting before the 21st.
Yeah. And Amy, I don't know if you heard me say when you were talking to Scott that a lot of these suggestions and ideas will go through you since it's your memo and resolution. So, but I'll be willing to facilitate that. And
thanks, Scott. I think that's fair.
Can we have the vote on tabling?
So table, I'm just trying to get this written. The motion is to table the resolution recommending moving forward with the USACE study to a date within 30 days of the next, or the November 21st UAB meeting,
Or no later than the 21st.
no later than.
And that gives us the ability to pull it up if we can. And we'll have to make sure, you know, if you're going to set a special meeting, we would not try to do it excluding members of the UAB. So we'll have to figure out schedules and other stuff.
And there's a 2-week public notice component to that as well, so. Is there? It's a week, maybe. But there's a public notice component. I'll have to refine and see what that exactly is.
Yeah, I think you probably, because of this meeting, you probably met your, whatever you're gonna need. So we would wanna do it with plenty of notice, but I think we actually could do it within 24 hours. Says the non-lawyer who's dealt a lot with those things. I think we've already published germane to what we're doing, plus the minutes of this meeting, plus. So we try to get it out at least a week in advance with a packet too. It sounds like, we're going to have at a minimum a bunch of hyperlinks to things.
Just to be clear, Renee, would you, sorry,
Would you like a roll call?
table the resolution recommending moving forward with the USACE study to a day no later than November 21st, 2022? Everybody agree? Everybody good?
Do you want me to do a roll call of this?
Yeah, maybe that would be a good thing.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, sure. Toom,
Yes.
Lick,
Yes.
Clicker,
Yes.
Spafford,
Yes.
Wells Mangold,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Carol.
Okay. Looks like that passes, so. Chief, it's been really nice to have you here tonight. It settled my nerves a little bit, and you definitely answered, and listening what Jill said definitely settled me as well. So very much appreciated your time.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.
Thanks to all your staff too.
They don't have to commute home. They like it.
They can smell dinner cooking right now.
Right. Thanks, everyone, for that. Moving on to reports. We already had Ms. White talk about energy assistance process and tools report, which is excellent. Kevin, would you have anything you wanted to say about the finance report, utility dashboards, or monthly utility?
Sure, I think it'd just be good to highlight our 3 main core utilities: electric, water, and wastewater, on page 36, 37, 38. I think we can hit page 39 too with our stormwater. But year to date, electric, our total net for an electric is $811,465 as compared to $180,566 last year. But one thing before I go on, I was talking to our finance director, Josh Solinger, before this meeting, and he's working on some new, more refined financing. This 811, this is what we've always done, but here's something in his mind that he doesn't care for that much. We have purchased inventory right now, but that inventory we have purchased is not accounted for, so the cash is gone, but we don't, in utility accounting, account for it till it's been put in place out in the field. So inventory is relatively high, not accounted for here, but that's apples to apples to last year. It's apples to apples to every other year. But moving forward, maybe in 2023, you might see a little bit of a change on that, where that 811 might look more like 540 or something, because we're going to account for some of that purchased inventory that's not in place. So he told me just to give you a heads up on that. He's going to be working towards maybe a change in the next 4, 6, 8 months on that. So anyway, as compared to last year, we're doing well with electric. One of the things is we haven't had as many hydro expenses this year as we did the previous year with the relicensing, so that's showing up there. Water, we're at 595, 560 compared to 379, 390. That's reflective of the drought situation this year, I would guess. I mean, had very little rain the last 3-4 months, so that shows up there. And then our wastewater utility, we're at 969, 667 compared to 672 last year. And again, that number is reflective of the water usage. So you can see that is up as well. And we definitely have places to spend that. Stormwater, we're at 44,152 compared to a deficit last year of 838. So we're sitting well in stormwater too. So all utilities are in a healthy position. I also want to give you another heads up that we are going to do a cost of service study for all three of our main disciplines next year: electric, water, and wastewater. Cost of service study is a kind of a check under the hood to make sure that we're recovering the costs we need to run a healthy utility. If we have indications that's not the case, we may forward that to a rate case with the Public Service Commission, but that will be determined after we do the initial cost of service study for each of those utilities. That will take place in 2023. With inflation and whatnot, I just think it's healthy that we do that. I'm the chair of the Rates and Advisory Committee for WPPI. And cost of electricity that'll be charged to utilities next year is the WPPI community is going up 12.5% next year in our budgeted amount just for wholesale electricity. So those costs do get passed along to our customers in a power cost adjustment charge if it's not recovered in the rates. So we may have to look and see if our base amount is healthy. So inflation, cost of energy, cost of equipment, transformers, cable, all going up, and we just want to make sure we're in a good position moving forward. So we'll do a cost of service study. We'll do a report to you on that next year. Then we can all decide together whether or not we should take that to the PSC for a rate case. That's just a heads up.
And Kevin, just to clarify, the budget is being presented, draft budget's been presented to council. They had their first workshop last Tuesday. They'll have another one tomorrow night at 5:30. There is no planned or budgeted rate increases for the utilities. So even though we're doing a cost of service study, we would expect if the UAB recommends, there wouldn't be rate increases till 25. Now, inflation and other things have been a little crazy, but all that being said, even with all the expenditures we might have more for hydros, we're not anticipating the need for a rate increase in 23 and 24, and we're not budgeting for a rate increase for 23, 24.
And even if we did, the timing wouldn't even allow it, right? It's going to take us a few months to do the cost of service studies. That's probably going to get us into Q3 of next year. And then once you hit the PSC, that's 12 to 14 months to turn that around. So you're going to be into 25, just on the timing aspect of it. So, you want to add anything else to that, Scott?
I guess I want to add, because sometimes it seems like we're patting ourselves on the back when we say we're not going to increase the rates. Electric customers are paying more this year than they did last year. So even though we didn't approve a rate increase, we have the PCAC charge that's approved by the Public Service Commission. And so when our wholesale costs go up, it's passed along to the customer. So I want to acknowledge that the customers are paying more for their electricity. And so when they hear us say, well, there's no rate increase for 23 or 24, the staff is well aware that there's still an impact to customers based on the wholesale power costs. So we're not increasing our return or our overhead or our administrative costs through a rate increase, but there is a rate increase from a practical standpoint, just like when wholesale power cost goes down, which it has in my time here.
You can see a credit.
We don't say the rates, we lowered the rates to the consumer because that was a function of the wholesale power rate going down and being passed along through the rates that were already approved. So electricity is going to cost more next year, but not because we've asked you to approve more staff or more overhead or anything like that. We're trying to keep that worked out and passed, not passed along to the customer because we already have the wholesale power costs that they're going to be paying. So,
You said that better. I kind of just glossed that over when I said the WPPI average wholesale power cost was going to be about a 12.5% increase next year to all of their WPPI communities. That's the wholesale. They're anticipating when they have to go out to the market and buy that energy. On the average, between their buying and selling of power, it's going to be about a 12.5% increase of the wholesale cost.
And
which gets passed along to the customer.
yeah, and that's their budget, we don't know what the actual is going to be.
Correct.
They're forecasting, I guess is a good way
They
to
were
say
wrong last year by quite a bit because it went up.
Let's hope they're wrong the other way.
The other way next year. Right. So anyway, I think that's just a good heads up for you. You can know what's coming in 23 and that we're keeping an eye on that and that you'll be abreast of it. So that's what I have on the financial report.
That's great. Thank you. Any quick announcements? River Falls cleanup, a couple that I was thinking of, and then I guess there's some work being done by Whitetail for the water tower.
Yeah, so last Monday they commenced the water tower project. They didn't start erecting the tower, but they were making connections out in Whitetail Corporate Park, and they're beginning to bring the water line up the hill to where the tower is going to be located. So that work has started. So, and when they see the tower go up, the community will be asking what's going on. It's their new 500,000 gallon water tower. So that's happening. Did we put the numbers in here for this cleanup? Let's see, I don't have that page in front of me. Here it is. Oh, there it is. So yeah, just for comparison, I was going to say 1,100, but it was 1,165 customers we had this year at the fall cleanup. It's compared to 1,060 last year. So 105 more customers this year. Things went without a hitch. So
any other announcements? Anybody?
I have one more thing too. It just came out today, and you alluded to it earlier, but River Falls Municipal Utilities is number 2 in the country for green power participation rate. And just to be clear on that, so this is a customer who voluntarily pays $3 a month for a green energy block. And this, as of the end of 21, we had 14.5% of our customers doing that. It's closer to 17% now as we get through 22. So that's all voluntarily contributed by an individual customer. So that's not spread amongst the rate base. And then that money gathered goes towards renewable energy projects. So, and we're number 2 in the country, right behind Portland General Electric, which has 26% of their customers participating. And the next one below us is Pacific Corp, Blue Sky Usage and Habitat, and they're at 10%. So we're about 5 or 6% ahead of the third place team. So I tell you what, there's over 2,100 municipal utilities in the country. We're number 2. And then we're number 7 on power, I just want to say correct, green power sales rate as compared to our overall sales, and we're number 7 there in the country at 6.28. So anyway, that's a reflective of our values in the community for renewable energy, I guess. So
baby, I misspoke earlier. We passed something. Tim might remember, but we passed something where we had Mike Noreen come to us, and we're paying $12,000 out of the budget for something. And I thought it was to assure that all of our city offices, city-owned buildings, were running on renewable energy.
Yep, Scott's going to hit that one.
So Renew River Falls. So we're, for that program, we're part of those customer numbers. We didn't help the percentage necessarily, which is what we have for what we're number 2 in.
Yes.
So out of our 5,500 customers, the city has 50 meters. So we helped it somewhat, although we had already, I don't think we had too many new meters that weren't already doing partial.
Right.
So we wouldn't have helped the number 2 ranking. I think we might have helped the number 7.
The 7 ranking of the overall.
Because that would be your total power and how much of it is renewable. And so by us purchasing additional renewable for city facilities, it would have helped our ranking there. I don't know how much it would have knocked it up.
It seemed like we were trying to butt up against that one that was untouchable.
It may have been the one we're 7 in now.
And who's that? Who's the number one in that one? Is that the Stanford?
Portland Generals, they're 21% in that. Waterloo is 18. Springfield is at 16. Oak Ridge is at 7.9, and we're at 6.28.
And I think was Palo Alto in there, one of those?
They used to be. They're not anymore.
Must have dropped out.
They dropped out.
That was a case where Stanford University was buying a bunch, which helped their renewables too.
Okay.
But the big one, the number 2, is that is all the 100% the volunteer.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So I don't know, something to be proud of for a community, I would think.
Anybody else? We're good? All right, we got to close this up. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Great, thank you. We are adjourned.